דברו במספרים, זה המושב הראשון שלנו, וזה המוטו שלנו במושב הזה הבוקר. המון נתונים יהיו פה, תתרכזו, תחזיקו חזק. החוכמה תהיה מה נעשה עם כל הנתונים האלה בשלב מאוחר. ראשון הדוברים שלנו הוא מר לארי רוזין, שזכינו לשמוע אותו בכנס הראשון שלנו, והוא הפך לחבר של ממש. והיום יש לנו זכות כפולה. לא רק שהוא הגיע כל הדרך מארצות הברית כדי להציג נתונים על השוק האמריקאי, כמו שעושה בפעם הראשונה, היה הפעם בעזרת חברת Cue.Ad הישראלית, הוא גם ערך מחקר עלינו, ואותו הוא יציג היום. לארי רוזין, בבקשה. מנכ"ל ומייסד חברת Edison Research, אחת מחברות הסקירה המובילות בארצות הברית.
Good morning. Boker Tov. I'm Larry, and I'm thrilled to be back here again. I know I met many of you 2 years ago. Whoa, let's see if I can move that a little bit. Sorry, guys. Get organized here. And I'm really excited to present what I have here today, which is a bit of a mashup of data from the U.S. with data from here in Israel, and to show you what I have and to sort of help document the changes that are happening so rapidly, as Noam and Ayala talked about. So the big question, I have a question mark at the end of this, is this a golden age of radio? What's going on in the world of radio? Some people say it's never been better. Some people say it's really struggling. So I thought I would start by looking at, hopefully you can see this, but you can certainly get the gist of it, which is this is the ratings for AM/FM radio in America over the last 35 years or so. And it started in 1980, and I wish I could get data farther back than 1980, but I have to believe it was going up and up and up. And you see it peaked in about 1983, and it's become this long, long trend that you can see going down and down and down. And the most recent ratings I have are from 2013 down there at the end. And this is the percentage of people who are listening to the radio at any given time during the day in our national rating sweep. So you see that listening to AM/FM radio is going down, and it's actually accelerated down over the last few years. And so how could you call this a golden age of radio, given that trend? Well, it's probably not a golden age of radio. What we're having today in America is a golden age of audio. If you look at everything, that I have no doubt that more people are listening to more kinds of audio than ever before if you put it all together. It's just things are changing, and they're changing really rapidly, and not nearly as much of that listening is going to broadcast radio as used to be the case. And the biggest factor that Noam referenced is online radio or IP-delivered radio. And that's a big part of what I'm going to talk about today. And we've been tracking, we're very lucky, we've been doing a tracking study of uptake of different trends in digital media at my company. It actually goes all the way back to 1998. But here's the data on the percentage of people who said, I've listened to online radio in the USA in the month before we called them. And we do this survey annually at the beginning of the year. And you see that the numbers were not small, but they were kind of stable and slowly growing. And then starting in 2009, they began this rapid upsweep in listening. And now, in our most recent survey, which was just completed a couple months ago, 47% of every person aged 12 and over in America told us that they had listened to online radio in the month before we interviewed them. So that's basically half of everybody, or 124 million Americans, saying they listen to online radio on a monthly basis. So it's kind of an amazing, huge number, and the big increases over the last 5 years are not an accident. They are as a result of what Noam talked about, and that is the advent of smartphone penetration. It has clearly grown as people have smartphones and are using their smartphones, and they're using their smartphones in a big way to listen to online radio. In addition, we have a layer of audio in America that doesn't exist anywhere but in North America, and that is satellite radio. America is a real car-oriented culture, and people, this is largely used in cars, and people have little satellite dishes on top of their cars, believe it or not, and they're tiny little things, and they, 15% of Americans now have satellite radio, and it's growing very rapidly. It's hundreds and hundreds of channels of audio. All the music has no commercials, and lots of speech-based content as well. It's become a really big factor in addition. So that's the point I make, is that when you look at what's happening in America and you see people everywhere with headsets on, no matter where they go, and they are basically having a soundtrack in their lives at all time. And so that's why I'm fully convinced that there is more audio usage going on than ever before, because people with their smartphones are able to bring audio with them no matter where they go. I have a 21-year-old son, and he and his friends, I've talked to them, and many of them say they literally can't be walking around, or they're not, they're unhappy if they're walking around at any time without the little earbuds in their ear, with a soundtrack along with them. So people are bringing audio no matter where they go, to the gym, just walking around public transport, and the places we more typically think of them, at home, at work, and in the car. In more and more places, and more audio is being consumed. And so I truly do believe that what we're having in America, and increasingly around the world, is not as much a golden age of radio as defined as AM/FM, but a golden age of audio. There's just more being consumed than ever before. And the big factor in America is a company that to date is only in the USA and Australia and New Zealand, and that's Pandora Internet Radio. They really are a phenomenon. I'm going to show some data about just how big they are and how much they are the driving force behind what's going on. But in as much as many of you have probably never had a chance to use it, we made a little video of people using it and talking about it to give you a sense for what it is. So let's see if I can pull this off and make it work.
All right, so Pandora, it's basically just also a simple internet radio app, if you will. And I actually already brought up a station.
Pandora Radio is really, really awesome. You just sign up with your email and you make a password, and it's a free registration. You don't even have to download a program to your computer. It's all through a website or the app on your phone. This one I feel has got a little bit more of a catered kind of feel to it, so it's a little bit easier to set up a station for yourself. You pick like an artist that you really like, or a song that you really like, or a genre that you're interested in, and what they call it, I think, the music genome database. And then they find artists that match your personal preference. You can go through and you can actually pick stations that you've already set up, and based on the ones that you've set up, it'll give you ones that you might like. You can check out more recommendations from that, and it'll give you a whole list of bands.
If there's something specific that you're wanting to look for, there's an artist, a type of genre, a particular composer, you can type it in and it will find it.
And it's pretty cool because once a track is playing, you can actually have the option to like or dislike a track. And if you like it, then more tracks based on either that artist or artists like that will start to come up.
As it plays songs, I like to indicate whether down here if I like a song, if I dislike a song, so that it, again, I can make it more customizable. You get a certain number of skips that you're allowed to forward, like you're listening to the music that you own, and then after a while it makes you wait a certain amount of time before you can skip through again. I can indicate whether I like or dislike a song. If I want to skip ahead, I can get more information by clicking up here.
Like I said, everything loads pretty quickly. It does have ads that come up, but they're easily closed. And then at any time, you can actually upgrade to Pandora 1 for no ads as well. That's just a small paid fee monthly. But there are advertisements on that one for sure, unless you register to pay a monthly fee, and then you can get a premium account.
The only downside I would say to having the free version of Pandora is that I feel like pop-up ads come up a lot more. I feel like in between songs there's ads a little bit more, but when it's a free version, I'm going to deal with it.
So as you see there, it's overwhelmingly ad-supported So it's very much like commercial radio, and there's ads in the stream as well as ads, as you saw, on the app that people can use. And Pandora is on target to have billings of about $900 million this year. They'll go well over $1 billion next year, and they are a major, major factor in the US audio market. Here's just a graph from a company called Triton Digital that compiles the size of everything, and it's a little hard to read, but it's not hard to get the idea of. The blue line is Pandora's growth rate, and the red line that it crossed in late 2009 is basically the sum of the streams of all the commercial radio stations in America put together. So just 4.5 years ago, Pandora was smaller than the combined total of the online streams of all the radio stations in America. And you see the unbelievable growth rate that they've achieved over the last several years. And it's now basically 6 times the size of the combined listening to all the streams of American radio stations. And you'll notice the second biggest line there, the red one or purple or whatever that color is, the second highest one is flat, and in fact trending a little bit to the downside. So people are actually abandoning listening to the streams of radio stations over the air, and yet Pandora continues to achieve new heights over time. And Pandora is achieving these heights despite a bunch of competition that's coming into the market, which I'll get to in a second. So why is Pandora so big? Well, this is really important to understand in terms of the advantages of online music delivery over what we're used to in an FM radio environment. One is customization. As you heard the people talking about, it learns about you. And if you hit thumbs down on a song, it's never going to play that song again. And everyone knows that experience of hearing a song on the radio they don't like and wishing you could tell the radio station to stop playing that song. Well, you can tell them that, and it knows it's you, and they will say, well, you don't like that song. We're not going to play it anymore. Skipping songs is a huge factor that really changes the experience of listening to the radio. Everyone knows the experience, again, of hearing a song you don't like and wishing you could tell the radio station, move on to the next song. Well, you can do that with Pandora, and what it ends up doing, and we've researched this extensively, is it makes listening to linear radio seem very slow and boring, because people are used to Pandora when they listen to regular FM radio. They're now literally taking their fingers and trying to swipe the radio dial to get to the next song because they get frustrated that they can't have the same experience anymore. But the biggest reason, and the least appreciated reason for why it's so successful, is how easy it is. They have duplicated the radio experience. It's incredibly simple. You start it up and off it goes, and it's very similar to listening to the radio. And changing stations on Pandora is as easy as changing stations on the radio. And so they've really created a very simple, elegant model that has really changed the game in the American radio market. So to look at a comparison of what's going on in America to what's going on here, we partnered with Cue.Ad, and Shimon Baron is going to speak later today from Cue.Ad to do a survey of Israel to match up with the survey we did. So we, working together with Cue.Ad, we did a survey of online adults and youth here in the two markets. So we have 18 to 65-year-olds who are online, taken from the TNS Israel Internet Access Panel. Whoop, I don't know why it says ISRA. I think there should be an A and an L there that I obviously lost. And I compare that data to the data from our survey, where our survey is 12 plus, but I sectored out 18 to 65-year-olds who are online so we could match up the data across the two data sets. And we found what's so fascinating is so many things were so similar between the two countries, 18 to 64-year-olds. So here we just said, how much time did you spend in the previous day online? And this is just the average. And we got the exact same amount in both countries among people who are online, 18 to 64-year-old. 3 hours and 8 minutes, 3 hours and 11 minutes, statistically the exact same number. And so what we'll see here and in the subsequent graphs is that the two countries are so similar to each other in so many ways, which makes it interesting how different we are in terms of audio and radio. In fact, Israelis not only are into social media in a huge way, they're actually more into social media than we are in the USA. 86% of the people in our sample of Israel said that they're on Facebook, as compared to 62% of the people in the United States. Some of the other ones are bigger in the US, like Pinterest and Instagram by a little bit, LinkedIn by a little bit from the USA. But in total, you guys are, I used the word obsessed when I was chatting with people, and it seems like people agreed with me that Israelis are obsessed with social media, and the data bears that out. Furthermore, we asked, how often do you check your social networks? And Israelis who are more likely to be on social networks told us they check them more frequently than we see in the United States. So I guess obsession isn't too strong. It was 63% of people said check at least several times a day compared to 42% in the United States. There are some differences in terms of radio listening. Have you listened to FM radio stations in the past week? We got 81% here. It's actually higher in the United States. Despite everything I said, the number is about 90% of Americans 18 to 65 say that they'll listen to FM, and then in addition listening to all this internet radio at the same time. In terms of where Israelis listen, this is listening at all in any of these locations, and this would make you like Americans as well. The biggest location of radio listening is in the car, followed by at home, at work, and smaller numbers for public transport and out of home performing an activity of some kind. And when we said which is the one place you listen to radio the most, the car is also the overwhelming leader. And the car, of course, could be an entire presentation unto itself, because the car is the one place where internet radio is not really being listened to in big numbers in the USA, despite the numbers I showed before. And the car is the next big battleground as the Detroit automakers and the German automakers, Japanese automakers are planning for your car to basically be a little mobile Wi-Fi device, and everything's going to change again when that happens. How do Israelis tell us that they listen to FM radio? Well, mostly they said on a regular radio device, but 27% said that they listen to FM radio via the internet, and Shimon will show interesting data later today about that specific point. 8% say they listen through their television to FM radio, and we got a little bit of other there. And when we looked at in the car, the numbers were interesting in terms of how they compared to the USA, where we had these numbers as well. The percentage of people who listen to radio when they're on their car is basically the same. In the USA, we're still a little bit more likely to listen to CD players, but the big difference is the third one down there, is listen to a mobile device or own digital music. And that's actually rather small here in Israel so far, with only 15% saying that they're listening to their, say, iPhone or phone through an auxiliary jack, or listening through Bluetooth, or listening through their phone in some way. And similar percentages, small but starting to grow, of people saying that they're listening to online radio in their car while they're driving. So the car remains the big opportunity space for online radio. So then we saw some really big differences between the two markets, and this related to the brands. I talked about Pandora, and there's other big brands in the United States. And so we asked about pure plays, not the broadcasts of FM stations online, but pure play radio, or audio or radio. Are you aware of any stations that are only over the internet that you cannot listen to on a regular radio device? In the US, virtually everyone said yes, I'm aware of radio stations like that. And here it's only half of people. So you see that big difference between the two countries in terms of brands that are known to people in the two countries. Whoops, that one. Getting back to some other differences, Israelis are more likely to say that they've watched videos over the internet than Americans. And those who do watch videos over the internet say they've watched 2 hours of videos over the last week. So you see this picture of a high-tech Israel, but as we're going to see more of, not as developed in internet audio as it is in so many other ways. Oh, and lastly, smartphone penetration. We struggled with finding a number, but by everyone's account, smartphone penetration is as high or higher in Israel than in the USA. So not having smartphones is not the reason that internet radio is not as well developed. So why has it taken off in the USA and not as much in Israel? That, to me, is the big question, and looking forward, how might that change? Here is aided awareness. We said, have you heard of a company called, this is from the USA, we asked about all these different radio brands, and you see how high the penetration into people's minds are for all these things. 3/4 of all Americans, and this is 12 plus, 3/4 of everybody in America is familiar with Pandora. And then there's brands iHeartRadio, iTunes Radio from Apple, which I'll talk about more in a second, Rhapsody, Spotify, Google Play, Slacker, and on down the list. And you see relatively high levels of awareness for all these brands who are doing all kinds of external marketing, television commercials, billboards, radio ads where they can, and all over the internet. Wherever you are on the internet, there's pop-up ads and there's ways that they're promoting themselves. By comparison, we asked about awareness to the sample in Israel for these brands, and you see the numbers are incredibly low by comparison. The best-known brands, at least among these, didn't achieve a level that well over 7 or 8 different brands in the United States had achieved. So there's just not that much awareness to date for these different brands. We also asked about listening to different online radio brands. And I mean, again, just to see how big this is, 33% of everybody in the United States told us they've listened to Pandora in the last month. So you know, that's close to 80 million people telling us that they've listened. So was that 10 times the population of Israel is listening to one brand alone, Pandora, in the United States. I did want to call out the 8% for iTunes Radio. That's from Apple, and that launched in America in September, late September of 2013. We fielded the study in late January and early February, so it was only a few months later, and Apple had already achieved third rank on this chart. And I think when you guys look forward into the future and think who might be the big competitor in this space, I think it's frankly less likely to be Pandora, and it's much more likely to be Apple's offering and possibly a Google offering as well. So we also made a little video about iTunes Radio, and we asked people why they listened to that, and here's what they said.
It's easy. It's easy. I'm not dragging out the radio or a CD player. The iPad is always with me, so I can always carry the iTunes around with me. So if I'm in the bedroom, if I'm in the house and I'm in the bedroom and I want to listen to it, I can bring it. Then I can bring it to the kitchen, I can bring it to the basement. It's completely portable, whereas, you know, CD players and radios aren't portable.
Just strictly simplicity and availability of certain artists that I like. You know, Beatles, for example, and I believe Michael Jackson. I think that they're proprietary to iTunes because they may own the rights.
I think it was better. It has more of a library, a bigger library than most of the other internet radios. And like, I have been listening to Spotify as well, and Spotify doesn't always have the newest music either. So I feel like iTunes has the newest music.
It depends on if I have an internet connection, honestly, because I don't have much data on my phone's package. So if I have an internet connection, I will go to iTunes Radio, since it's all in one place with like my iTunes library, and I have a lot of stations saved there that I like. If I'm not connected to the internet, I'll probably go to a Spotify or, yeah, probably Spotify, since I can get that in airplane mode.
I used iTunes Radio to change it up and, you know, just discover different kind of music, because I've been listening to the same playlist like all day at work. So I figure, okay, on my way home, you know, I'll try out something new and I'll listen to different kinds of music.
Yeah, you know, it depends. If I want to kind of be the DJ, then I'll put on Spotify and all right, we'll take requests now. Versus if I just want to kind of have the music on and you want to, you know, if you don't want to kind of set it and forget it, then I'll put on iTunes Radio.
So Apple is able to, you know, Pandora is ad supported, as I said, and Pandora needs to make a profit from what they're doing after they pay their rights fees and things like that. Apple is playing a completely different game. They're trying to sell iPhones and iPads and tracks from the iTunes Music Store. So they can actually possibly lose money on a radio service in order to promote their other pieces of business. And it is widely expected that they will sort of start their march around the world after launching successfully in the United States over the course of probably the next year. So that's the big one to keep your eyes on. By comparison, very small percentages of Israelis who said that they had listened to these brands as compared to the data that we saw in the United States. A little more data on what we saw from the online radio market in our survey. If they said they do listen to online radio, the main way that they said that they listen is they listen to a live broadcast through a station website. So in that sense, the Israeli online radio market looks a lot like the American radio market 5 years ago. Where if you remember that graph I showed where the streams of FM stations was the leader 5 years ago before Pandora came and just completely blew the market apart. And so that's really what I think I see here is what it looked like for me 5 years ago tracking this data in the United States. We did see that, similar to what we see in the States, is that people who do listen to online radio tend to be very responsive to advertising. Among the people who've heard advertising on online radio, we actually had a very high percentage who said that they went on to visit an advertiser's website, to talk about ads that they heard. I think to date, advertising in this environment is fresh. It has new ways to interact with, and so it creates some interest. So where will this go from here? I think internet-delivered radio or audio surely will continue to grow in Israel and follow the path that's already happened in the United States. The big question for me is, what's going to be the source of that growth? Is it going to be a domestic entrepreneur who sort of cracks the code? Will it be from the big powerhouses like Apple or Google? Will Pandora launch here, or will one of you guys talk successfully to Pandora to get them over here? Will it be your broadcasters, as it is in other countries? It's the state broadcasters or commercial broadcasters who are really bringing it forward in other countries as well. Will it be some combination of all these things? I'm here to tell you I think it's going to happen. I think it's frankly almost impossible to stop. And the only question is what will be the forces that bring it and how will it come here? And like I say, will it come from all of them? And then what innovations in this space can high-tech Israel bring to the world that Silicon Valley and others haven't thought of yet? I'm not here to say by any means that Pandora's model or Google's model or Apple's model or any of the other models that are out there are the only ones. Based on your track record here in Israel, there's doubtlessly other ideas and other ways to go that no one else has thought of yet that could be the next big innovation. The one thing about this space is the barriers to entry from a technological standpoint are relatively low. The barriers to entry from a legal and regulatory level can often be very high in terms of paying for content. But the one thing about what's going on in the high-tech world that I don't have to tell you is that new things are launched all the time, and you can't believe that they're just 1 or 2 years old after they've achieved such incredible space. So I'm going to post the results of this on our site, and Cue.Ad will also have it on their site. I'm here through the rest of the day, and if any of you want to talk to me about any of these things during any of the coffee breaks or anything, I'm happy to chat with you. And Ayelet, do I have time for some questions, if there are any? Or so if there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. Yes, sir. Oh, wait for the microphone. Hi. I left it over there.
You hear me now? Oh, go. The question is about news in the radio. You checked about music, soundtrack, etc. Did you check anything about news? News stations, news in internet stations, iTunes? Yeah,
the attack of online radio, certainly in America, has overwhelmingly been on music. They attack to the sort of the biggest part of the market. The amount of news that's being listened to is small but growing. National Public Radio has a very avid online following, and they've transferred a lot of their content to the web and is being increasingly listened there. And interestingly, and very intriguingly, National Public Radio, which is the closest thing to an analogy to the BBC's news structure and things like that in America, just did a deal with iTunes Radio. So now if you choose in iTunes Radio, you can say, give me the music I want, but give me a top-of-the-hour newscast from National Public Radio, or twice-an-hour newscast from National Public Radio. But that's still very much in its infancy in the United States as well. That's mostly actually still being coming from listening to the online streams of broadcast radio, whether it be from a public radio station and that news source there, or even from commercial news stations. Any other questions?
Hi, Menachem Vinograd from the Voice of the Upper Galilee. As a radio DJ, I'm interested in what is our role in things like Pandora? What's the role of the DJ, the commentary, etc.?
That's a great question. To me, the Achilles heel of services like Pandora to date is that they are just music streams. You know, music, 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 audio commercial, music, 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 things like that. And there are definitely people who miss the interaction with a DJ in that environment. And there's people who stay with commercial radio or other radio because they miss the DJ. The role of the DJ, of course, is to be so vital and have a connection with the listener that's so powerful that these pure music sources seem less compelling. Part of the opportunity that Pandora jumped into is the fact that in many American markets, they've de-emphasized the role of the DJ. So, you know, as compared to a national DJ who's barely talking, or very poor DJ, or often on commercial radio, no DJ at all anyway, Pandora seems like a better option to them. But it is clear that for people who have a relationship with an on-air personality, that they have migrated much, much more slowly or not at all to some of these internet audio options. So it just comes down to providing that kind of compelling content. That when you ask people about people listen to both, why do you still listen to radio? They don't mention the music hardly at all anymore. What they mention is the DJ, the personalities, news, traffic, weather, sports, all the other stuff that radio brings that to date online radio hasn't brought in a big way at all. All set? Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.